All right, everybody, welcome to what has been a very long time planning for another Game Dev Roundtable here on Game Wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. We're back with our five-person little overlay here for a discussion on the impact on influencers and streaming, on what it means to develop games and market them for today. And we certainly have a lot to discuss here. So, as per usual, we will go around our little table and introduce ourselves. So, we'll go, since I'm kind of like the odd man out on this overlay, we will start with Josh, go to Ramin, Seth, and then Tomo, and then myself. So, the other Josh on the table here, you can kick us off.
Hey, I am Josh, CEO of Casual Game Studios. Also on Keys to Game podcast with Josh here, and it is amazing. We finally got everyone together. So this is going to be a blast. We got everyone organized, all the time zones, so it's going to be good.
Right. And to Ramin.
I'm Ramin Shokrizad. I was a game journalist from 2001 to 2005, and then I began pioneering the field of game economics and at making some large games like World of Warships, World of Tanks Blitz, and now I am a co-founder of a Web3 game that's using blockchain to add player-owned assets to a very large, massive multiplayer MMO with the focus on social interaction. The company is called Eravant.
All right, and Seth?
Hey, I'm Seth Goldberg. I'm coming in from Midnight City. You can see in the background. An undisclosed location. So I'm a game designer and a game critic and a game tester. I don't know, I'm all over the place. I do lots of things. I have my hands in so many pies, it's not even funny. But I'm glad to be here. I love these casts, and we need to do more of
Mm-hmm.
them.
All right, and Tomo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tomo Moriwaki. I've been a game designer for a long time, I think somewhere between 2.5 decades. Probably my biggest claim to fame is being the creative director of the Spider-Man 2 game way back in 2004. I think that is 16 years ago at this point. I worked in console for a good long time before branching out and developing other things. And at some point I started a small dev studio called Hyperkinetic Studios. We do a lot of client work, but we do have a game on Steam. It is still in early access, and it is called Epic Tavern.
All right, and I am
18 years, Tomo.
Again, time has no meaning around here.
Not anymore.
Nope.
And 18 years, exactly. Damn. Coming up on 2 decades.
And I am the other Josh here on the table. I, of course, run Game Wisdom. I cover all variety of games. I am a multi-book author, with my last book on deck builders wrapped up, and now I'm going to be starting RPGs. And over this year, I have probably played more indie games than I think anyone else alive. Now I'm still trying to organize that list. But gentlemen, it is great to finally have our little sit down here. Like we said, it has been a while. But this is certainly a topic that I think with this group, we certainly have, I think, a mix of people or mix of different thoughts and interests on this. Again, for myself, I would probably, I think Seth and I would probably, we've done a lot in terms of marketing and trying to reach out to indie developers, especially over this last year. And the idea of, I think, influencer and streamer culture affecting the game industry has been one of those things I think if you were to go back 20 years and tell someone, hey, in 10 years time, people making random videos on the internet about playing video games is going to be the most biggest and most effective form of marketing for games, and all those prints and all those websites are going to suffer because of it. And what we've seen, especially over the last decade, has been this really big impact of not just covering games online, but as I wrote about in a post this past week at the time of this recording, kind of the rise of like the celebrity game cover. The idea that it's not so much about, a game being shown, but about having a Jacksepticeye, a Markiplier, Northern Lion, PewDiePie, maybe someday me in that category as well. But it has really, I think, shifted this conversation as to what does it mean to cover games and what does it mean to market them? Because I'm sure for everyone on this panel and for everyone watching, you have seen probably half a dozen, mobile game ads, and even just, sponsored videos of people talking about Raid Shadow Legends, or pick any big name mobile. So I'm going to throw this question to everyone, and we'll see like who chimes in first. But from your own perspective, what do you think about how like influencer culture has really, I think, changed or affected the game industry and game marketing?
First of all, I want to make it clear that while the developer of a game can benefit from marketing this way, and they should market that way as part of their toolbox, the person that's coming out ahead is, of course, going to be the streamer.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with them getting the key. That has nothing to do with anything except for the fact that their audience is hungry for content, and their audience is hungry for a certain type of content. And it's not always going to result in one-to-one sales or a percentage of sales. I don't think you can say that, if you get Markiplier to play a game, you're going to get 10% of sales out of that. It's not, you can't do it that way. There are some streamers that have caused games to go completely viral. It happens, but it would happen anyway with some of these games. They're just that well made. Vampire Survivors is obviously one of the ones that we can discuss right this second. It would have went viral without streaming, and it kind of did, but streaming helped, of course. But you look at a game and you go, okay, it's fun watching someone play. I'm not going to necessarily get that game because I'm watching that streamer for what that streamer brings to the table, not necessarily the game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not crapping on this as a marketing aspect. I'm just trying to set expectations to those developers that are looking for it. It's not the streamer's job to sell your game.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things that you mentioned for sure, like if you are like if you're like depending 100% like on marketing your game, like my game is I'm going to use streamers to market it. This is my thing. You're going to probably be surprised with your ROI on it because I actually have some very close friends who've had games covered by Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and the amount of sales that they got from the video were like nothing, right? Because again, the people are there just to consume the content of that personality, right? So they're just seeing what their take on that game is, what they think about it. They're not really going to say, okay, well, Markiplier likes it, so I'm going to get it for sure. Doesn't mean anything. Right, it's just how did he react to it? How did he laugh? Was it funny, etc. So on that, the second point is then okay. Well, how do you want to develop your game so it does have some virality to it, something that can catch, and so those are things you can keep in mind. But the main point is again, like Seth was saying, don't rely on it as a crutch for your marketing, as your only marketing. You have to explore every avenue, and so just depending on like a personality, like Markiplier covered it, boom, I'm a millionaire. That's not going to happen.
I think there's something that's really important to keep in mind in any of these conversations when we're talking about marketing and exposure, right? Is that it's still your game that's going to be in front of the eyes of those potential customers, and so they'll need to be grabbed by it. it'll need to convert them, or else it won't, right? Something that ends up being great fodder for their content doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be great for you, right? If you look at the game, and I think what did this for me recently, there's a game that came out recently about Dwarven Sky Tower or something.
Dwarven Skykeep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw a streamer streaming that, and I saw like a minute of the stream, and then I okay, well, I'm not going to watch the stream anymore, and I bought the game and I played it because what I saw, it was immediately clear to me that I wanted to play that game. And what was funny is it was purely based on just the shape of that experience. I didn't even stick around long enough to see if it was a good version of that game. I'm like, scratch an itch, I'm interested. Here we go. And I think it's easy to. I think I hear it too often, even though I don't understand why. That if you have the right marketing strategy, that it will mean sales. Of course, the quality of the product has a humongous impact on things, right?
All right. And Ramin?
Well, I have a lot of stories here. I'll try to keep them short. When I was an early journalist covering the MMO space, at my peak around 2002, I had 400,000 daily viewers, which was a lot for back then. And my career in journalism came to an end when I published a paper explaining that the person that had exclusive access to the Shadowbane alpha or beta was actually a undisclosed paid employee of Ubisoft, which was the publisher for Shadowbane, and that's how that person had exclusive access, and they were being paid to shill for the game, and this was a big deal because this person was masquerading as just an independent journalist. This actually triggered a troll campaign against me, which ended up resulting in our site getting hacked, all my papers getting double deleted, and that's what ended up giving me enough of a push to dedicate the rest of my life to game economics instead of journalism. But soon after that type of influencing, if that's what you want to call it, I think became illegal in the United States, not maybe in Asia, but in the United States. And you can see even now, like I think Kim Kardashian got sued by the government for $1.5 million or something for shilling for cryptocurrencies, which is kind of the same kind of thing, especially in Web3, where I ended up finally, because that was the ultimate path of where game economics would take me, would be into Web3. Now I've come full circle. Now I'm a company owner, a studio owner, and I'm getting a constant barrage of messages in my inbox, mostly on LinkedIn, but also an email, from influencers who want to charge me to shill our game and to talk about how great it is. And I'm looking around at some of these other products, and I won't name any names, but I think it's pretty obvious that these people are pushing these other products, and they make these amazing claims about how much money you're going to make playing this game or that game, which is just almost, I'm not going to say totally, but almost mathematically impossible. That's what a lot of my research has been over the last 20 years. But and people think, oh, I'm going to make all this money. They go in, but they have to. These games always ask for money up front, and then they rarely get that money back. And I mean, these influencers, I think, are probably breaking securities laws and maybe some other laws. But to me, that's the full circle of what started back in 2004, 2005 with Ubisoft, and now it's becoming a real hazard for players, because how do you know if you're looking at a legal influencer or one of these shadowy influencers that's not making their money from the streaming, but it's making their money from the shilling?
The dark side of this is there's a lot of streamers that are doing just that. They're paid or they're under contract not to say negative things. That's actually one of the reasons why I started the Strategy Informer. Was I wasn't getting good information about the cool strategy game. So I was like, let me help out with the discovery of this and be on the up and up. A lot of streamers are not declaring that it's an ad or they're sponsored. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in America and they're committing a crime. And I think EU has the same policies, but no one's going to come down on them. The only people that lose are the consumers because they get talked into buying the game and it not being what they expected.
Well, even going back to 2001, 2002, Sony Online Entertainment, if you didn't publish a good review of their product, they would strike you from the list of early access to their game. So only the people that would shill for Sony Online Entertainment would get early access to the game. So I ended up just boycotting all reviews of Sony Online Entertainment games because I wasn't going to reward them for that behavior. But you can see that goes back 21 years at least. That's been a problem.
Well, affiliate marketing kind of is what brought that to the forefront or the forward to the FCC, and that's why they stepped in. It's because the affiliate marketing was crazy, and all these claims people were making about the product.
I mean, we can all.
Go ahead.
Reviewers were getting all expense paid trips to castles in England and bragging about it as if like it was okay, and of course it had to have influenced their reviews.
Yeah. Back then I was like, that is the job I need to get because wow, they're going everywhere.
I see on Twitter a lot from like people saying, "Oh, I'm so happy I got into this partner program. They send me the latest professional gamer chair." Or, I get like the free, display sword, like a 5 foot long sword from the game. And like, thank you for this amazing product there. And again, to Ramin's point about like SOE, I think we all remember the whole thing that happened with GameSpot when they did that negative review of, I think it was like Kane Lynch. And like, IDOS came down on them and it caused a huge uproar. And this was
all the crap that Total Biscuit got for being a bit aggressive with the reviews. I mean, by the end of it, when he passed away, there were some studios that were saying, "I'm glad he's dead." Over reviews. That's
going back. I had forgotten all about Total Biscuit. How long ago was that?
Yeah.
John passed away in 16? 13?
Yeah. We'll say like somewhere in the mid 2010s.
And 16, I think.
And then to go ahead, Tomo.
I was going to say, to take it back a bit, though, most of marketing for most mainstream products is heavily paid for. And honestly, I mean, it's okay. That's how it's always been. And I mean, part of the reason why influencers are at all effective is that it is a better way to do it. That the fact that I get to see the game at all is an improvement over, like a static 2D ad or the video that millions of dollars went into the production value of. I mean, they feel like outdated approaches to promoting something now, right? And the whole content creator culture, I think, is working in so many ways because there's like a person there. We like people. It's relatable. It's why a story doesn't work if there's no characters. And all these things, like all of the mechanisms through which companies use to cheat in a way, it's always been that way. And it'll keep being that way, right? So if we think about what these benefits actually are, I mean, I think what we'll find is, if you can find a good match and that there is a content creator whose audience has an affinity for what you've already made or what you're about to make, maybe, I guess, if you can plan ahead, then there's like the money that goes into that promotion has so much more potential traction. And that's this, like, it's not so much that like all the old problems are still there. It's that like these little bright patches of possibility have also emerged amid them.
Yeah, definitely, Tomo. Like, so instead of like, just throwing darts at, oh, this influencer or that, like, if I'm making, I don't know, a Dark Souls like game, then I would go to someone who only plays Dark Souls and they do something like that. So a content creator who has an affinity for my type of game, who has a match, definitely, if you're doing a marketing campaign like that, would definitely be more ROI for you.
Yeah, that's critical. I'd like to give 3 different examples of where it worked or didn't work. Our other buddy Josh, we have too many Joshes, who made Vault of the Void.
Not enough.
Pretty soon it's going to be the Josh cast.
Yeah.
I have a game called Josh's Journey. We can play it. I'm ready.
Excellent. So he made Vault of the Void, which is a deck builder card game. It's a very good one. I think it's probably one of the better ones. But Raptor played it. Raptor's got a population of 1 million people, and he is what he is. He's a good streamer. People enjoy watching him. There was no bump from Raptor playing it. So it's really not his thing. Raptor is known as an RTS streamer. That's where he made his bones, is playing the War Games series with the Rat Pack. Back when he was like, if he had 20 people watching him, that was a lot. So that's an example of not pairing it with the right streamer. Now let's look at Northern Lion, who his specialty is deck builders and roguelites and some of the more intellectual games. Like I could see him playing like some of the offshoot chess games and it being good. People love Northern Lion. He's got his own Reddit community. He's not as big as some of the other guys, but his community is very targeted. If you get a roguelike in front of him, he's going to be able to move that. Perfect example would be both with Splunky and Isaac. He played the hell out of them, and he might have made more money than a developer. I mean, he was doing Isaac runs, literally multiple runs every day for 3 years. And he's putting out, 10 videos a week. It was crazy. And he puts in the work, but he was dynamite for the Isaac people because his community eats that up and they loved it. And they saw Northern Lion playing it and having a blast and getting some tips from him because he's really good at exploiting this stuff. Or not exploiting, but finding the good stuff.
Yep, and I would say like the Northern Lion comparison would probably go with like Bear Taffy with Darkest Dungeon. I remember seeing a lot of the videos he made on that. He got I think a Wayne June a sound bite when you subscribe. He kind of went all in on Darkest Dungeon and a lot of the more challenging games. I think he did Spelunky. Yeah, he did do Spelunky too. I think he actually has a character model after him in Spelunky 2. And to Seth's point there, you really do have to pair the person. I've heard stories as well. I forget what game it was, but they gave it to this streamer who only plays casual mobile games. It was this super challenging RPG, and they didn't know what was going on in it, and it just was basically a waste of everyone's time in that respect. And I want to go back to something else that Seth said a few minutes ago about, again, the return on investment, or the idea that, again, that if your game just gets put in front of Markiplier or PewDiePie, or whatever, it doesn't guarantee success like that. And I think that, again, is one of the things from a development side that developers have had to learn both the easy way and the hard way. That it is about figuring out who does what. Just because you see someone with, 500,000 viewers or subscribers on Twitch doesn't mean that person's the right game for you or right influencer for you. And again, I think the main point, and we've all said, is that people who tune in, they tune in for the person, not necessarily the game. And it is, I think, very tricky in some cases to kind of figure out what is that ROI. Like, I've heard from people who watch my streams, like, I'm obviously not at a Northern Lion or Markiplier level anytime soon, but the people who tend to watch me tend to, I think, be more engaged about the game. That if I say I really like it or I'm enjoying it, I do see people on my friends list who will then all of a sudden either wishlist that game or buy it outright. Now, again, though, it's that question of, is it better to have 500,000 eyes on a game and maybe a percent or less than a percent of them just running out and buy your game, or having 100, 200 eyes on it, but getting 40, 50% of that audience saying, you know what, I want to support this game. And again, I think for a lot of people, though, I think like how the influencer market has evolved, they want more eyes. It doesn't matter if, again, if Markiplier win, lose, or draws on a game, a lot of people will view that as a success, where it may or may not actually be in the long term for that developer.
Well, there's very little cost involved in getting it in front of the developer. I mean, you can hire a PR firm and they'll get them and they have their lists, or you can just mail a key out to 4 million people and pray. So what's your investment into that? Just time. So I think you should do it regardless. Now, there's also a halo effect. People that watch Markiplier may talk about the game with their friends, or because gamers are friends with gamers. We all share information, and that might get a wish list, and that might get a sale. So there is some benefit to getting more eyes on it. But of course, you want that 40-50% return if you can get it. So you should focus on smaller communities that are more into the niche than the larger streamers where, no one cares what Ninja's playing. They just pay attention to Ninja, and it's, I dislike Ninja, but as a streamer, but when people watch Miskiff play a game, they don't care about the game. And Miskiff doesn't play a lot of games. He's more just chatting. I want to bring up, and I know I'm monopolizing a little bit of this, and I'll shut up a little bit. And after this, Among Us was a failed game. Absolutely was going under. Absolutely was a disaster. Some streamers picked it up. It went on sale on Epic for 99 cents. The streamers picked it up at that point. No persuasion from the company, and it exploded. It's a Inner Sloth has become a huge entity from that. So that's a scenario where the streamers took that game and brought it someplace it couldn't get by its own. I think having hooks into these channels, so your game has stuff that the audience can vote on, or it names after subscribers automatically, or when you're done playing a game, it shoots out your results to Twitter. These are all viral hooks that I think are good things for a lot of games out there that people are kind of forgetting about, because they're only effective in the short term. The long tail, no one's going to care. But getting that bump in the short term is great. And that's another way to use your own game as its own influence, because you're using your social channels to push out that influence. Just
For sure. For sure. Good point on using all those various APIs. Like you can use Twitter APIs, Discord API bots, like all kind of stuff that you can include in your game that'll really help out. So always good to keep that in mind for sure. And definitely something I see a lot of devs omit. And those things, like those little things, while you said they help out a ton and they go a long way. So for sure, they're there for you, and it's not like you have to really like figure out the APIs. They're already there. So if you're using Unreal or Unity or whatever, pick up the API, drop it in, make it look nice, and then you'll have some more click-through rates and stuff.
And I mean, it maybe it seems like it's too basic, but I mean, an impression has value, but that value is filtered by the quality of the audience or the demographic of that impression, right? The basic math is if you have people, 100% of them are interested in your product, then it's very valuable impression. You don't know what percentage of them will convert necessarily, but certainly more than one where only 1% are even interested, because 99% of that audience doesn't care at all, even if they do see you, right? And that buying that impression is buying nothing. And if you could and a 1% of interest is suddenly super interesting if it's 10 million people.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
That said, 10 million people usually costs 10 million people worth of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's like how Seth was saying, like you can find many smaller niche streamers and that would fit more to you and it might keep your costs down in that way. And then you could have like a bigger market, right? Instead of going for the giant 10 million, 10-1, more strategic streamers for you.
Yeah,
I have a
those
curator
like
that's
Seth was-
about 500 people, and it pushes games.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of curators that are much larger, and they're either scams or their audience just doesn't care.
Don't care.
What
And there's
do
also
you say?
too much noise, and there's also a lot of noise, right? Like the smaller the community is, the more dedicated they are, the more they follow, the more they listen to. Like for example, Josh is like when people are watching your stream, your watchers are very dedicated, right? The larger your audience gets, the more kind of wishy-washy it gets, and it's there, but when you have a very small hardcore niche dedicated audience, for sure, like you said, you notice that people were wishlisting games that you were liking and that you were recommending your friends, stuff like that, and that's how it works.
Yeah, I think we're all saying from the developer side, we're all saying the same thing, which is that if you're trying to court an influencer, you should try to find an influencer that that follows your genre and has a following that follows that genre, and that's probably much more important than just raw numbers of subscribers or followers on an influencer.
Certainly.
From the player side, I would say there's a couple of things. One, you shouldn't just automatically trust anything you see in social media. There's a lot of misinformation, and I'm being kind by saying misinformation. A lot of it's more like manipulation on social media. So social media consumers need to be very savvy in the modern age. In addition, if you have somebody you follow that you kind of like and you trust what that influencer, like for instance, every day I watch Splattercat. And but I know that Splattercat is really good at real-time games. Like if it's a real-time, like a roguelike or some sort of a builder or one of these Dwarf, Sky Fortress or whatever type of games. He's into all that kind of stuff. What he's not so great in is like math-heavy games or strategy games because he's very passionate. He likes to get in there and get excited, and he's very colorful. His language can get very colorful, but he's not like a strategizer. So I always have to take, if he follows a game, like for instance recently Master Magic, I had to take that with a grain of salt because I know he's not going to actually stop and read the descriptions of the creatures or want to spend a lot of time building up his his strategy. So like watching him getting slattered by phantasmal warriors because he didn't read that they're ethereal and that he has to have magic weapons or whatever. So and then he's complaining about it because he doesn't understand why he's getting slaughtered. His audience, if they've played Master Magic, they all know why he's getting slaughtered, but he doesn't know. So you just have to realize, as a consumer, you also have to know the limitations of your influencer, and no influencer is unlikely to, unless you're just a single genre player, they're not going to follow every genre that you're interested in at the level that you'd want them to be.
Yep. I mean, if you look at something like
Slaughtercats. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, if you look at like the horror genre, for instance, like you have people like a Manly Badass Hero, um, Balkan Soup. I think I'm butchering their name, but yeah, like to Ramin's point, that from a development standpoint, you do have to be very aware of, the person who's playing your game. And sometimes you can have people who will screw up at a game, and that can also be an interesting thing to watch. Watching someone make that mistake that everyone else sees like 20, 30 turns ago, and then you get to laugh at them when it all comes to roost. But again, if you're trying, and I think it goes back to this kind of like, what is the purpose or what is the information that the consumer is going to get? If you are, super hardcore roguelike or RTS person, you tune into someone, screaming and ranting, oh my god, why aren't my units moving? Why is everything dying? They may go, why would I want to watch this person? And they may not even care about the game at that point. They're just like, see, oh, he's yelling, turn off. Mm-hmm. But again, you could have someone who knows that genre inside and out. And there are some really good people in the strategy genre space. I think Christopher Odd is one of them that, like when they play a game like XCOM or Midnight Suns or whatever, you're not only going to get entertained by their play, you're going to learn something about that game because of it. One of my most, I think, watched series when I did a Let's Play guide for Darkest Dungeon. I think people are still watching that series that I did because they like what I do, but they're also getting something out of that content.
Well, that's an interesting point because there's many different types of streams. You've got your Let's Plays, you've got your early looks, you've got reviews. So work with the content creator maybe to try to tailor it for the game. I think also you can, as a developer, if you're as a smaller developer, I'm certainly in the smaller indie thinking right now. Be in the chat with the streamer, interact with them. That's going to cause people to go, "Wow, this guy's."
That's always big. Always big. People freak out. They're like, "The dev is in the chat. Dev is in the chat. Hype train. People love that.
And I think the fact that the dev's there helps sell the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep, I had a few devs who were watching me while I was playing a turn-based fest this past week at the time of this recording. And now, again, I think not only does it help sell kind of legitimacy of the game, but the developer can actually provide context and information. So if, let's say, the streamer is stuck, or they don't know what's going on, you literally have the person or persons who made the game there to help walk you through it. And it may sound, I think, a little hokey to people watching, but that can be the difference between someone who is still playing the game and someone who just says, you know what, I'm stuck, I don't know what I'm doing, uninstall the game, move on to the next one on my list.
Yeah, and again, it also shows, like, you being in the chat, just how passionate you are, how much you care. And I think I've bought more games that have been streamed when the dev has been in the chat just because of that reason. Just because I'm like, the dev is there, they're interacting with me, I get to meet that person because we love people. Like we said, we love the personalities. And so, then I just would buy the game like that just because they were there interacting. So it does work. It helps.
Use your networking and your skills to reach out to your followers. Don't just be an intercom or something, broadcasting out, hey, here's my screenshot, here's the sale. Interact with the people. Be a person. Show your personality. We've discussed that on the podcast before. Certainly.
Well, it can be painful.
Don't just be a loudspeaker.
I think a lot of devs don't recognize that there's an entire kind of like knowledge base to acclimate to, right? And you can't acclimate to that information without watching streams, without engaging. And that takes a lot of energy. If we hadn't done all of that streaming of dev for like the last 8 years now, 7 years, I wouldn't be able to say hardly anything about this topic. And of course, streaming dev. I streamed dev before I watched Twitch streams. And then I started to understand.
Wow.
But then, like 3 years after that, I go to TwitchCon on a panel to talk about streaming game dev. Got to meet these other streamers. It's like bit by bit, and then we're talking, and it's not. You can't plan for a 7-year trajectory about learning about stuff and have it affect a given product unless you never ship the game, like Epic Tavern. But that said, the important action item is putting time in and getting to know the situation. And obviously, audience, influencer, developer. Influencer is kind of a new piece of that puzzle, new like as the last 20 years, or not 20 years, but like 10 years, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And that has to be considered, right? And you have to build an understanding of that structure. It's something you have to get. And there's no, I can read 3 sentences and follow simple instructions and get a benefit out of it. I mean, unless your game is absolutely awesome, in which case, then everything's easy.
And as a quick time check, I know we have about like 20 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that. There is one topic, or there is one question I want to bring up to the table as well. And this kind of goes back to what Ramin was saying at the start with regards to kind of the dark side of the influencer culture. When you have someone who is either doing it without like explaining that it's a sponsor or they've been paid for it, or we have unfortunately heard stories of communities and influencers like going after a developer or, saying, this person is so-and-so, they're horrible people, and then people will harass them, they'll DDoS, they'll do doxing, and there's definitely this kind of, and I think this goes to kind of the overall conversation of the sway that influencers have. Like we've said, like from a development standpoint, it is definitely a case of you need to find the right person for you. But how much influence does an influencer have when it comes to their own community? That if someone makes a video saying, this game is a horrible piece of trash, or developers are lazy, they're stupid, why would anyone buy this game? What does that mean for that developer? What does that mean for, I guess, the discourse that goes forward from that point? And again, like with the group here, I just wanted to get your thoughts on kind of what does it mean, like in terms of like, I guess like the power they can wield over an audience or over the opinion of a game. Because we have seen, again, so many videos that if a developer either does something intentionally or unintentionally wrong, or even if it's considered like a slight that they even intended it to be, people will attack them. Like, one of the most infamous examples, of course, is the whole, SJW attacks that we have seen from a lot, and I do mean a lot, of YouTubers and people on social media.
Cancel culture sucks. I hate it. And we've seen this with pre-Gamergate stuff, Gamergate, the SJW movement. They ran the Five Nights at Freddy's guys out of game dev because, and they canceled him because he was giving money to Trump, but he was also giving money to everybody else. So, they didn't do that. They didn't talk about that. They just talked about, that he was giving money to Trump. And, it's sad. I don't think that should exist. If some dev wants to be, let's say, anti-vax, who cares? I just care about his game, not him as a person. I mean, I guess if he turns into Hitler, I guess that's a different thing. You don't want to be supporting that. But yeah, someone like Markiplier could fire off on someone and wield a little bit more or a lot of power, depending on it. Total Biscuit, going back there. No, I'm sorry. Jim Sterling and his Randy Posford stuff, and his stuff with the other smaller asset flipper DAOs. He obviously was able to lead a crusade against them. Whether it was valid or not, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that is a dark side of it. I'm not saying that Jim Sterling's a bad person. He just, his views are very vocal. But on the same token, Markiplier gave his name and his likeness for AFK Arena. It can switch it the other way. These larger influencers do wield power, though. There's just no way around it. I mean, if Kim Kardashian were to go out and say something, there'd be a lot of people that would follow it, whether it was good or bad, or true or false, for that matter. It's kind of our culture. That's why I think there's ethics that need to come into this, and people need to find other people that match their ethic or their ethos.
Yeah, I think it's a really complicated topic, right? Because, each of us is going to have our own perspective on what we think is right or wrong, right? But so is literally every single other person, audience member, and dev. And there are obvious patterns to it. And I mean, my position is, that they should be free to boycott me. And I'm free to express my opinion. Now, what's part of the problem is that most of the me's in this universe don't really recognize what the inflection point is, right? Where things get negative or problematic or damaging to your situation, because so few people know that, and everyone who gets bitten by that generally just kind of hides out for a long time if they got stung by the internet mob. So it's kind of this can't be that bad. Nothing's bad has ever happened to me like that. And then it happens, and then the damage is done, and then you hide, right? It's a very difficult to learn or know what the right call sort of circumstance. It's like the shape of that situation is difficult.
I just had a situation where I was unhappy with Devolver, and I didn't go after them. I just kept it to the point that I was unhappy with, which was they were creating a cash grab mobile game. I'm not gonna, start doxing their employees. That's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, hopefully that just gets better at some point, or anonymity somehow gets reduced or diminished somehow, or the consequences of being super crappy materialize. When people go the extra mile to cause harm, that's super sucky.
Yeah.
When I got started in journalism, I was trying my best to promote the products that I thought were really good, and I was the only one in the industry back then that had like a 200-hour guarantee. I would not do a review until I spent 200 hours on an MMO. So I always had the most detailed. Because in an MMO, the first part is the part that they hook you in with, and it's always the most polished. It's later on that you see the ugly. So you wouldn't really know whether a game was worth putting the time in unless you did that much time on it. But I could be very critical of a lot of games, and now I feel like there's a little bit of a karma coming here because now, even though I'm trying to build those games that I've always wanted, because I couldn't get the industry to make the games I wanted to play, I ended up creating my own studio so that I could make those games and hoping that there are other people like me that want to play the same kind of things. But now I've got we did this podcast on Web3. I can be very critical about Web3 games because I think a lot of them are just hype or scams or whatever. But that doesn't mean they all are. And three of you were on that podcast with me where you ripped me apart when I was trying to defend Web3 game development, and you were doing your best to pigeonhole me. And I think at the end, I was able to show that at least there was some potential benefit for Web3 game development. And then I follow Yang Ye, for instance, who I think is a very interesting influencer. But he keeps saying almost every podcast, even on totally unrelated topics, that no one has demonstrated any value for Web3 gaming to players. And I would be shocked if he doesn't know that I or we exist. So I'm not sure if he's really telling the truth, but he's saying that because that's what people want to hear. At least to his audience. And I would love to get on, to be able to talk with him or get on a stream with him or do something with him to show that it isn't easy to make a Web3 game that benefits consumers, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. That doesn't mean it's not being done. But the binary, good or bad, is so much easier than the nuanced messaging that would be required for that.
Mm-hmm.
And in 5 years, especially if we're successful, it's going to be a totally different conversation. But that's the conversation you're hearing now is a conversation that sells now. And that's not necessarily reality, but influencers can create their own reality, which can then become everyone else's reality until it isn't anymore. It's very complicated.
Exactly. So that parasocial relationship between the audience and the influencer can be very deep. Josh, we were talking about the powers that they can wield, and it is an extreme amount of power that they have. And of course, that's why we're talking about this, how much effect they have on marketing, etc. But we do need to be aware. Like Seth was bringing up the point about the ethos of the streamers and things like that, or the ethics. Those things also have to be considered, right? Because while they can benefit the game in certain ways, they can definitely be extremely detrimental. Like from right, even if you choose the wrong streamer or not. But for example, if someone goes up on there and they're playing your game and they go into some kind of insane political tirade, that's not good for your game. So also be sure that all that stuff matches, right? Because again, like the parasocial relationship that they have is very strong. That these people, they go just for the personality and they will follow these people. So if something happens, you just have to be aware. So like choose carefully. We've talked about matching who you're with, but also be aware of who these people are personally. I'm not saying like we have to know everything about them, but who they portray and who they are, that is also stamped on your game too, in a way. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and to
Could
that
be
very
something that a PR company can focus on is matching you instead of just sending you out to a bunch of streamers.
Yeah,
That could definitely be a value add.
yeah, definitely.
And I want to add to Josh's point. I'm working with some local people right now about doing like a kind of a video game contest here in Pennsylvania in a few months. And they were looking at, and we're kind of discussing, what kind of developers we can bring in. What about major influencers and YouTubers? And the very first thing someone said is, "Yeah, but anyone we bring in, we got, we got to vet that person because it doesn't matter they have 10 million subscribers." If that, you don't want someone who, let's say, has, a very disturbing background, or every stream is just constant profanity and whatnot,
Right.
being associated with your event meant for high schoolers or even younger than that.
Have like a doctor disrespect event, thing happening, like anything, right? And your name is on that for sure, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
I like Doc.
Or like PewDiePie, for instance, I don't really follow him, but he has a mixed reputation, so that can go either way for you if he's promoting you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but again, it'd have to be a very interesting game to actually truly benefit from the PewDiePie cast.
Right, for
It's
sure.
a very specific product that's going to have to be there. Now, granted, if you get millions and millions of views, there's some benefit to that, and it's hard to quantify too, because sometimes that can be the first impression, and then follow-on impressions are what do the conversion. It's all very, very hard to track, and especially for small indies who don't have the resources to kind of get all up in that math.
Mm-hmm. And I know we have to be wrapping something like the next 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So I do have, I guess, one last one again. Like, talking about like the dark side of social media. That's another 2 hours easily. So I think that's too big of a topic. But there is one final question that I want to ask everyone. We talked about the idea of streamers and influencers on kind of the marketing and the parasocial relationship itself. But I wanted to get everyone's thoughts really quickly on the idea of making a influencer or a stream friendly game. Because this was something that we saw back in like 2015, maybe 2015 to like 2019, where the developers releasing, oh, this game has Twitch integration or YouTube integration. You know, your fans can vote on whatever you want. I know like a lot of tiny build games have done something along those lines. And it always seemed like these like little like kitschy kind of things. Like, it didn't really seem like something that was really involving. But even with the idea of the horror genre, I think has really embraced the streamer, kind of the audience side, more than the gameplay side. And I can rant about jump scares and that kind of thing for 5 hours. But I want to get everyone's thoughts really fast. Like, the idea of developing a game purposely to be stream friendly or influencer friendly, does that hold weight anymore in today's market?
So, I think that sort of the perspective on a game's streamability has evolved quite a bit. I think back at the beginning, it's just people trying to have features that connect to Twitch, for example. Like, it was all sort of mechanical in nature. But I think some of the more sophisticated outlooks are really starting to accommodate this idea of what is socially interesting to watch, and how can we accommodate that? Like, I need the design of my game. I need the fundamentals of my experience to be supportive of an audience, something that can be funny for them, right? And that you go back 15 years and that thought never happened, right? That just wasn't a part of the logic. And I'm not saying it's a common part of the logic today, but it's definitely more and more becoming a kind of a normal thing to think about in game development and game design.
I touched on this a little bit ago in the podcast. I think it's a very good idea for the short term to include Twitch integration or some sort of YouTube integration, something that engages your audience. We saw our buddy Simon do it with Ring of Pain, where the audience could submit art for the characters. And so you would encounter that player's creature. That was cool. It's not going to be a long-term thing. It's going to be a short-term thing. But look at all the social deduction games and how they've really started to shine on stream, and they've started to be sold more often. So, there's something there.
Well, something interesting.
If you can drop it in.
I'm about to turn off my camera and leave to pick up my kid. But one thing I like to add is this last GDC, I ran into 3 companies that were focusing on a layer between streamer and their audience, and trying to get game developers on the hook for including APIs and the monetization in actual interactions. Like, it's like entire, like, that means investment is going towards that entire concept. That wasn't happening before. I mean, I'm sure they were thinking about it during the pandemic, but obviously we didn't go to GDC during the pandemic. And with that, I think this is an amazing and very important topic, and I'm sure we should actually have more conversations about this. And I'll talk to you guys later.
I have.
I'm not gonna close my my video. That way, or I'm just gonna turn off camera and mute, so that way it doesn't disrupt your windows.
Hopefully, but yeah, Tomo, have a great night, and we'll chat again in the future for sure.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Tomo.
Yeah, Tomo.
Yeah, and it is that very tricky aspect of why, or what is the aspect of, I guess, like, this impact that it is going to have on the game, and even like on how people decide what games to play and what games to cover. And this was the other point that, again, like we can rant and rave about, but that idea of, and I mentioned this in my post, that if a YouTuber or a streamer has a choice between two games, one that is an incredibly amazing title, could very well be an award-winning game, but let's say it only has 20, 50 reviews on Steam. It has very little footprint on social media. And then the other game, let's say it is a Fortnite, a Call of Duty. I'm sure you guys have seen on Twitter that tweet going around of like major streamers complaining there's no video games to play. And it's like Dr. Disrespect and someone else like who all they do is play like Battle Royale and FPSs. I'm sitting here with like 50 IGF games I've judged over the last 3 weeks. But it's an idea of what games are being covered. Because again, if someone has to choose between the game that can, blow up their channel, or that one that everyone is talking about, that everyone is searching on YouTube and Twitch for streamers and videos on, or that little tiny niche game, and even if you are a creator who covers specifically niche games, your footprint is not going to be as wide as, say, a PewDiePie, or a Markiplier, or a Dr. Disrespect.
Well, even on the smaller side of things, we were just talking about this in our team chat on Discord about you can play what you want, or you can play what the algorithm wants.
Yep.
Those lists of 20 strategy games that are coming out, or 10 new Steam games, or here's the top 10 from the Steam Fest. Those do amazing on the algorithm. And they're not really engaging. They're just they're listicles, right? You hear 2 minutes of the game and a little gameplay, and they move on to the next one. But those make the people money. And so the smaller streamers are going to do that over playing your unknown or partially known game, even if it's amazing. So that's more research that you need to do, is to find the streamers that will play your game instead of going with the top 10 and, manage your expectations. It's not their job to sell your game. It's their job to entertain their users, and they get benefits when the users watch ads. They get nothing, well, most of the time, for selling your game. You're just trying to get noticed. Do your research, find the people that match your interests, and don't expect anything.
I'm not an expert at Twitch or streaming culture or such, but the game I'm building right now, Star Garden, where we want the game to be, it's an auto battler. It can have up to 80 players playing simultaneously in the battle, but they don't even have to be online to have it happen. The battles are scheduled to happen every 3 hours, even possibly while you're sleeping. That way you can participate in these huge battles without having to have your real life schedule revolve around the battle. So we're trying to make it such that you'll want to, instead of coming on and like watching a video on YouTube every morning when you get up, instead you can get up and watch your own battles that were happening while you were sleeping. Sometimes they're epic battles, and we're doing we're trying to make the game very watchable, so that it'll be entertaining for the participants to watch and maybe even share with their friends, and such. So that's why we end up biting the bullet and building the game in Unreal Engine 5. We have a team that has a lot of experience with that. We have these video during battles. You'll zoom in on the action on maybe one particular creature doing a special maneuver, or doing a little dance, or doing some sort of action. Like just this week in Alpha, I saw we had a giant mushroom creature that was flexing like this, and it was hilarious. Everybody was cracking up. But I mean, that's not there for gameplay. That's there to make the game more watchable. So I don't know what ultimately we're going to do. What?
Push those to TikTok when something like that happens. Capture it and push it to TikTok. It might do well.
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, I wouldn't personally go on TikTok. But
Me neither.
I got subject my marketers to that.
And I think to that point, it reminds me a lot of kind of the push for esports and the fact that a lot of the major like games and updates to like esports related games in the last decade has been making them more watcher friendly. You have broadcaster modes. You have professional commentators like Day 9 and so on. That there is a market. I think this kind of gets back around to the idea of influencers and YouTube, that there is a market to being able to present your game well in front of someone. And to the points as we've said that, again, it's not the influencer's job to sell somebody on your game. And if your game, and I think this gets back to even another topic about the quality of indie games, that again, and this is something that Seth and I were talking about like strategy games and onboarding. If your game doesn't present itself well in the first minute of play, not only is the consumer not going to care about it, but so is any streamer or influencer. Because why would they want to spend 40 minutes of a stream reading, 30 tutorial pop-up windows trying to explain how this game works? Or why would they play a game that they have no idea what they're doing, they're completely confused, and every time they click on something, you lose, you die, game over? They're not going to do that. And
You suck.
yeah, there you go.
Good ego boost for the influencer.
There, yeah.
If you're a streamer that focuses on visual novels, your life is horrible. I mean,
Do they exist?
you know, where do you market your game if you've got a visual novel? Because no one wants to hear someone just read unless it's Felicia Day and she'll put some inflection into everything.
Yeah,
But-
and they're
and
ruining
then-
the story too if they do read it.
Yeah. Terminal Conflict, the game that I work on, not the best game to stream. It's a dry strategy game about the Cold War. I'm not gonna send that to Markiplier. I sent it to Quill, but he wouldn't touch it. It's just not entertaining enough for the stream. Doesn't mean it's a bad game. Just means it's not a game you can stream.
Yeah, but I think
In the end, the best thing you can do to ensure that your game gets sold is to make a good game.
But it doesn't hurt to make it watchable.
Yeah, definitely.
No, not at all. Not at all.
as a complete tangent, I'm wondering how that Terra Invicta game is doing, the one from the Long War mod devs, that I've heard is both amazingly brilliant and completely obtuse to understand all at once.
It's very complicated.
It might be the most complicated game ever made.
Oof.
Well, and the best game ever made. It has so much content in it.
There's
and-
the marketing plug for them if they're watching.
I'll talk to
Worst game
Tim.
ever, but
Or-
so much pride. So much.
Yeah. I even plugged it in my my development channel for my community, but I honestly don't have enough time in my life now to really give it the attention it would require to be successful at it.
Yeah, it's a beast, and that's both. It's a beast for good, and it's a beast for bad.
Yeah, I'm Midnight Suns is a lot more approachable for me, though I haven't finished yet, and I've got over 150 hours in it.
Oh, nice. I'm on the fence of getting it, but the writing puts me off. But someone told me that it's Marvel writing. What do you expect?
Well,
Yeah.
but it's witches, warlocks, and the occult is the focus, and they kind of make fun of the Avengers because they're too straight. So if you're a little bit alt culture in any way, then I think it'll appeal to you more than like an Avengers movie would.
Oh, I hate Avengers movies.
See, there you go.
I'm not a big fan of the MCU, so maybe I would like it.
Yeah. And I mean that, and a big part of the story is them just struggling with trying to get noticed and respected by the mainstream superheroes.
Oh, ow. Well, the card combat looks good, and that's what attracts me. Anything with cards.
It is really solid card gameplay for sure.
I recommend it. I'm really enjoying it. If you've got a computer that can handle it.
Yeah. All right, but we are over an hour, and we can easily just start ranting about any of the other topics. Tomo may
We should
get
just
back.
do a "What are you playing?" cast.
What are you playing, cast? Right.
Yeah. Tomo may come back and be wondering, why are these guys still talking here?
You'd know why, Josh.
Yeah.
You'd know why.
True.
But you're
But
like the
we started to
masters
go
of the
down the
overrun.
ethics rabbit hole, it could have just exploded.
all right,
Hour.
so I think with that, let's do like one final kind of, I guess, final thoughts on the topic. So we'll go in reverse order since unfortunately, Tomo's headset cannot talk for him. We'll start with Seth and work our way around.
So, final thoughts: engage your audience. Don't count on one marketing method. Blast out as many as you can. Don't necessarily try to go for the bigger players. Go for quality over quantity, always. And make a good game. Playtest it. Playtest your game. Playtest your game. Did I mention to playtest your game?
I would say you could get lucky with a big influencer having a good broadcast of your game, but I would say more likely what's going to work for you is being very deliberate about approaching influencers, courting them, making your game accessible, making your game watchable, and work your way up. If you start to build a following, then the bigger influencers will see your game as something they want to take a look at and maybe promote, and they will just do that automatically if you can build up to it instead of just trying to go straight to the top. Do your work, build it up. Don't expect it to all happen in the first week or even month. That's my advice.
Yeah, definitely. Just going on that, like build it up. Like where you start is where you start. You'll get to where you need to get. Be yourself. Be real. Like whenever you're tweeting or talking to anybody, don't come off fake. Be 100% who you are. Be real. When you're dealing with the personalities, be aware of the parasocial relationships that they have. That has an effect on your game. Make sure the personality that they have matches with your game. Someone who's conducive, works with your game. Game that you have would be helpful if it is watchable, streamable. Don't forget all those APIs that I mentioned. They're there for Unreal Engine 5, Unreal Engine 4, Unity, Godot. They're all there. So you can include all those Twitch APIs, Discord APIs, Instagram, TikTok APIs. All those things are there. Other than that, I guess that pretty much covers it.
All right, and again, I think the panel has said it very well. Make sure you understand who you're going to talk to. Understand the market for your game again. And again, that is research that you have to do as a developer. If I'm making even if it is like something like off-the-wall kind of game, a cooking, survival, action, horror, roguelike, whatever, look at what people are saying about even those individual genres. And again, the idea that just throwing, closing your eyes, hitting send key to 10,000 people you see on YouTube, and I've gotten a few of those emails. Or also I get this email, it's like, it's 800 people on this email, completely, hi, so-and-so, we have this game, would you like to play it? And it's just sent to like 800 random YouTubers and streamers. It's not really going to work. And to the developers there are developers I think who swear off of this. They've heard the horror stories about key resellers and people, lying and saying, hey, I run this channel, send me 75 keys and I'll cover your game. You have to pay attention to that, and it is something I think in today's market you can't completely swear off. You can't just say, you know what, I will never deal with anyone on social media, I will never send a key to any influencer, I will just, put my game up on Steam and, it will obviously sell 500,000 copies. That doesn't happen. And you have to, again, be aware of what people are saying about the genre. Because, again, the right influencer for your game can strike gold. If you have that great combination, if you get someone like a Northern Lion with Binding of Isaac, or Bear Taffy with Darkest Dungeon, it can come back. And there are developers who really thank those influencers. I've seen examples who put, a honorary, a cosmetic item or a skin for that streamer in their game.
Yeah.
And it does go a long way when you can be directly tied to either a popular streamer influencer or someone who's up and coming. If you can get in at that door of, say, someone who may blow up to be the next big Darkest Dungeon person or the next big Spelunky, and you can grow with them, their audience in a way becomes your audience. And that's how we have these kinds of lightning in the bottle moments. But again, I think to everyone's point, it's the lightning in the bottle stuff. You can't, force that. You can't just try and manipulate the algorithm or, beg influencers to turn your game into the new Among Us, or even something like a new Valheim or Vampire Survivors. And you have to really sometimes it can be that easy. It can be that lucky. Put out Vampire Survivor and blows up. But again, as we've said many times over, by the time you see a trend, it's oftentimes too late to directly capitalize on it.
Yeah.
But I think with that, we will wrap things up. We finally got 5, well, minus Tomo at the end there for it, but it has been great, and hopefully we can get everyone on the same page either after the holidays or into the new year. Maybe the New Year's resolution will be better scheduling or getting more time set up. So, as always, I will give everyone a chance to do any last-minute plugs, social media, whatever. For Tomo, again, you will find links to Epic Tavern, the Discord, and all that in the show notes, as well as everyone else. But we'll go with the original order, so Josh, Ramin, and Seth. So, Josh, feel free.
Yeah, go ahead. My game, Rooster Rampage and Samurai Pig, wish list down below, and follow me on Twitter. And that's about it.
You're muted, Ramin.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Ramin Shokrizad. My company is Eravant. Our primary product is Star Garden. We are about to launch a minigame version of Star Garden in about a month called Prelude. We just minted a customizable Arama PFP that you can change you can add other NFTs to it and change the way its appearance and customize it. We're about to release additional items that are Christmas themed or winter themed for it, and it's. I already talked a little bit about it. It's going to be big.
So, I'm Seth, and my links are going to be down below. But, if you're an indie dev, I'm going to plug myself a little bit here. If you're a small indie dev and you want some assistance in finding the right people, finding what curators to go for, finding what streamers, I happen to know a lot of the industry, and not like Markiplier, but the smaller folks that maybe you can get on and would benefit you more so than just sending out 10,000 emails. I also do paid consulting if you're looking for that in the marketing end of things. Come to my Discord. It's a great place. It's mostly devs and content creators. So, right on.
And I guess I get to
Happy
plug.
holidays.
Yep. I guess I get to plug myself here as well. So again, if you're watching this, do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. I have my own Discord as well, where it's mainly like enthusiasts, students, and developers hanging out. Not as big on marketing over there. But again, if you're looking for someone who has very much play, I think, all indie games for 2022, whether they come from an established studio, 2 people, 1 person, even a student team, and you are looking for someone who can certainly provide critical feedback on your game, reach out to me here, Twitter, email, whatever, and I will be more than happy to check your game out and probably cause a soft lock or game crashing bug on stream, which seems to be my brand now when it comes to playing indie games. So if you don't mind your game crashing in front of an audience, feel free to get in touch with me. So, to everyone watching, again, thank you so much for tuning in. We will try to get back onto a regular schedule again. Getting 5 people in game dev together on a at a fixed time is the ultimate challenge. Do not deny that. But to our panel, again, thank you everyone. Josh, I think this was your first time doing the Gamedev Roundtable, so I hope you had some fun.
I had a great time. Great time. I'm amazed that we got it together. It was almost like getting a game published, getting everyone together.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have more tables and such planned for the future with more guests as well for developers. So we will try to get all that going. So to the panel, I hope all of you have a happy holidays and a belated one to Tomo when he watches this recorded in a few weeks. But yeah, anything else you guys want to say to end the cast on?
No, I had a great time. I'm glad we were able to get together.
I love these casts. They're probably one of the highlights of what I'm involved in. So
Right? Yeah, love it. Love talking about this. So anytime we're ready to go.
Yeah, and I appreciate that we when we do pull it off, since I'm all the way over in Sydney, Australia, and you all are in the United States, so it's not that easy to get us all together for these little get-togethers.
I need to make it harder. I will get 5 more people, get a few European time zones in, really step up the difficulty.
And G++.
Yep. All right. So
I think the difficulty is already high enough.
Yeah. Too many modifiers as is.
this is a FromSoft game.
It is.
Or a Paradox Interactive one. All right. So, everyone, have a great rest of your night. To those of you watching this in the future, hope you had a great holiday. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. And until next time, take care.